Welcome to Montage Microchurch Network, where we are making disciples by loving Jesus and loving people. This series will explore the letters Paul wrote to churches while he was in prison: Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians. Join us while we wrestle with and apply these amazing letters to our lives. This week, Paul's telling us to take off our old self, to take those things that used to be us and get rid of them, and to put on our new self. Right, we're going to leave that one on the floor and live in this new life that God has given us. So why is real change so stinking hard? Not the small stuff, but like the deep stuff. Why do people like me sometimes, who genuinely love Jesus, who've been following him for years, they get stuck in the exact same patterns over and over? I mean, the same anger, the same insecurity, the same lust they've struggled with. And they've been confessing it for years, but don't actually change. I don't think the answer is that they're not trying hard enough or that they're somehow not really saved. I think a lot of the time the real problem is that they're trying to change from the outside in. They're attacking the behavior without ever addressing the identity that's underneath it. Paul's about to give us the most practical and honestly the most counterintuitive approach to actual lasting change that exists anywhere. And it doesn't start with a list of things to stop doing. It starts with a fact about who you already are. Let's see how he builds this. We just came through Paul's big theological case, right? Jesus is supreme, you are complete in him, don't let anyone add to what you already have. Now, Paul makes the turn into application, into the practical stuff. But pay close attention to how he makes that turn, because the order matters enormously. He doesn't open with a behavior list. He opens with an identity statement. And then everything that follows in this chapter flows out of this one sentence. Since you have been raised with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits in the place of honor at God's right hand. For you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ in God. Right? Since you have been raised with Christ, Paul starts with a fact, not a command. Your spiritual resurrection has already happened. When Jesus rose from the dead, everyone who belongs to him was raised along with him, spiritually speaking. That's not something you're working towards someday. It's already true about you right now. And Paul says, since that's already true, set your sights accordingly. The behavior follows the fact. It doesn't create the fact. Your real life is hidden with Christ in God. I want you to actually think about what that means for how you see yourself. The truest, most real version of you isn't what you see in the mirror on a bad day, or even a good day for that matter. It's not your worst decision or your most embarrassing moment, the thing you think would change how people see you if they knew. It's not even your best moments or your biggest accomplishment. Your real life, the most true thing about who you actually are, is hidden with Jesus. It doesn't change based on how today went. And when I actually let that sink in, that my real life is in Jesus, not how today is going or how I perform or what anybody thinks of me right now, the things that normally have way too much power over my mood, my decisions, my sense of worth, they can start to feel smaller when I keep my eyes thinking about Jesus. And it's not because those things don't matter at all, but because they're not where my life really is. My life is in Jesus, and nothing can take that away, no matter how today goes. So what? Well, verse 5 through 9 tells us, put to death the sinful earthly things lurking within you. Have nothing to do with sexual immorality, impurity, lust, and evil desires. Don't be greedy. But now is the time to get rid of anger and rage and malicious behavior and slander and dirty language. Don't lie to each other, for you've stripped off your old sinful nature and all of its wicked deeds. Paul goes after it directly here, and he doesn't soften the list at all, right? Sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, greed, put them to death. Anger, rage, malicious behavior, slander, dirty language, lying. Get rid of them all. This isn't gentle suggestion language. There is a real urgency behind what Paul is saying, right? The old self is dead. So stop feeding something you've already put in the grave. You don't keep visiting a grave to check if the body's still breathing. And the connection back to verse 1 through 4 is the whole key here, right? Paul doesn't start with this behavior list. He starts with identity. You've been raised with Jesus. Your real life is in him. You died to that old life. Then, he says, put these things to death, right? The actual power to put them to death comes from knowing who you genuinely are now, not from gritting your teeth and trying harder through willpower alone. I mean, willpower might get you through a rough week, but identity goes all the way down to the root. And I want to say something specific about the anger, slander, dirty language part of this list, because I think sometimes we quietly treat those as like minor compared to the more obvious sins at the start of the list. But Paul puts them in the exact same category, right? The rage that flares up at somebody close to you, the way you talk about people behind their back when you're frustrated, words that tear someone down instead of building them up. Those aren't just minor things or that's just how I get when I'm stressed, right? Paul says they're signs of the old self trying to run the show. And he says it doesn't belong to you anymore. Stop putting that back on. I love what David Platt says. He says, you don't have to sin. You have been given a new nature. Act like it. So instead of letting that old self that's lurking inside of you out, Colossians 3 tells us to put on your new nature and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator and become like Him. Christ is all that matters, and He lives in all of us. I love this. How do we do it? We learn to know Him better. And Christ is in you to help, right? The new self gets renewed as you learn to know Jesus better. There it is. The actual mechanism behind real, lasting change. It's not gritting your teeth. It's not behavior management. It's really knowing Jesus deeply. As you grow in actually knowing Him, spending real time with Him, letting His Word shape how you see yourself and the world around you, you're being renewed from the inside, becoming more like Him, not by copying Him on the outside, but by being transformed by Him underneath. You want to overcome your pornography addiction? You want to get a hold of the anger that just bursts out from you sometimes? You want to stop swearing? You want to stop talking poorly about people behind their backs? The real true answer is you need to go hang out with Jesus. Not just religious activities. Although I do believe that many religious activities were originally intended to connect you with Jesus. What you really need to do is spend time with Jesus. And yes, tools can help manage the behaviors, but the true and lasting solution comes from knowing in your core that Jesus is in you, that Jesus loves you, that Jesus nailed your sins to the cross, and Jesus empowers you. And that closing line is huge, that Christ is all that matters, and He lives in all of us. Every label that normally divides people into categories, where you're from, what you've done, what you haven't done, what group you belong to, none of it matters in Jesus. Like, we are the church. We are the people Christ actually lives inside of. That's the only identity that finally, ultimately counts. Underneath every other label you carry around, underneath American or soccer player or jock or nerd or whatever it is, the identity of Christ is the deepest. See, we're not supposed to keep picking up that old robe and putting it back on. It doesn't belong to you anymore. You already took it off and threw it away. So leave it there. You've got something new and so much better on now. And the new thing is what's actually true about you, whether or not your behavior has fully caught up to it yet. Your real life is founded in Jesus. The old self is dead. So stop trying to put it back on every time you feel pulled towards an old pattern. Knowing Jesus more, letting Jesus renew you from the inside, and then watch what happens with actual change. Not because you finally tried hard enough, but because you finally believed who you really are. It's your deepest identity. And here's something practical to actually take with you today. The next time that maybe you feel that old pull of your old life, right? The anger rising or the lie forming or the lust creeping in, or whatever your specific old robe tends to be, try saying this to yourself before you react. That's not who I am anymore. My old self is dead and my new self in Jesus lives. It's not like some magic phrase, right? It doesn't fix everything automatically, but as a way of reminding yourself of the actual truth in the actual moment you need it most. You're not fighting to become someone new, you're fighting from the new identity you already have, against an old self that's already dead and just doesn't know it's supposed to stay down yet. And remember, the renewal Paul talks about doesn't happen through sheer effort alone. It happens as you learn to know Jesus better. So as much as this passage is a call to put things to death, don't let it turn into a checklist of behaviors to manage through your willpower. Let it turn into a deeper hunger and pursuit of actually knowing Jesus, because that's where real change comes from. Questions we get to talk about together this week. What old robe do you keep picking back up, even though it doesn't belong to you anymore? Second, which item on Paul's list, anger, lying, lust, greed, slander, hits close to home for you right now? And lastly, I want you to pick one intentional way to know Jesus better this week. Not a checklist item, an actual pursuit of Him. And then come back ready to share what that looked like for you. Because really, church, this is all about Jesus. And not just an understanding or a knowledge of Jesus, but a relationship, an intimacy, truly knowing Him and being with Him and letting Him change us from the inside out. So let's chase Jesus together. Love you guys. Thank you for watching. If you would like more content, to connect with us, or to explore more of who we are as a network, visit montagemicro.church.